on the show again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
For sure, man. We always like having people like you on. A, because you're in the limelight, on the UFC shows and all that stuff. You're a UFC veteran. But you're also deeply rooted in Jiu Jitsu, which is my favorite thing to do. So thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
So, Ames, you want to get right into it?
Yeah, man. I'm pretty excited for this weekend.
Yeah.
For both fight cards. Well, more so on the Saturday fight card. But from a excitement level from 1 to 10, how souped up are you for this weekend?
I'm excited, man. I think there's some really good fights.
Okay.
I think that the Albany card. I think they chose the right main event. I don't see that one going the distance. Both those guys are different sluggers.
Yeah.
And then for the Toronto card, it's a great fight. It doesn't have the same kind of name power that was originally scheduled, obviously, with Daniel Cormier and Anthony Johnson. And,
sure.
But I love the Pettis Holloway fight, man. I think it's a great fight, and one that's definitely going to entertain.
Sure. Do you think that was probably the best fight to make in the division? Now that we kind of have a clear understanding that Conor McGregor, the ex-champion, will no longer come down, do you think that that's one of the most exciting fights you can put together and the most important fight?
I think so. Listen, I think there's there's a lot of great 145-pounders out there. But I do think with Anthony Pettis being the former champion at 155 pounds and Max Holloway and what he's done, I mean, I think he's on a 9-fight win streak right now, which is insane considering the guys that he's faced. And
sure.
Anthony Pettis for Oliveira. I think those are kind of the two names that you kind of had to put in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes sense, and the winner of that gets to fight Jose Aldo, and then we see what happens after that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Who do you have coming out of that fight? Because both of them are really skilled, stand-up artists. Like, I can't really put a figure, but if I would, I'm just rooting for Holloway just because I really like him, but I just don't know who's going to come out of this fight.
Yeah, both those guys are good dudes. I think that I think Holloway has the advantage, especially with it being a 5-round fight now.
Okay.
I think with 3 rounds, I think that Anthony Pettis definitely had a good shot. I think Holloway might not be as dynamic as a striker as Anthony Pettis. Maybe not as flashy, but I do think he's a better striker. I think his fundamentals are a little bit better in that he uses his footwork very, very well. He's always in the proper range. He takes calculated risks. Sometimes he gets a little crazy and just points to the center of the octagon because he wants to throw down.
That was the greatest ending. That 10-second bang out was the greatest thing, man.
Yeah, and he didn't have to do it. I mean, here's a guy who was winning the whole fight, and he just said, screw it, let's do this last 30 seconds, let's throw down, baby.
Oh,
absolutely.
So, that's the kind of guy that Holloway is.
Yeah, man.
He's an animal, man.
I actually
I think,
Go ahead, I'm sorry. I actually reposted that 10-second clip on Instagram, not because they're throwing haymakers, but because Holloway was winning that fight, and he said, you know what, F it, let's bang it out, like they said in his post interview.
It takes a certain
he was
kind
like,
of
he saw
fighter.
it in his eyes, he was like, let's do the damn thing, man.
What an amazing
He's
athlete.
a warrior, man.
Now, Holloway's a madman, dude. He's a madman, and I think that him being a little bit taller, a little bit rangier, I think is going to give Anthony Pettis trouble. I think that Anthony's the better submission guy. I think that Anthony, submission-wise, I think is going to be better than Holloway. So I wouldn't be surprised if Pettis tries to mix it up and maybe tries to test the mat skills of Holloway.
Sure.
But Holloway just always tends to find himself in a proper range where he can stop takedowns, land his shots. Obviously, he's not going to be afraid to stand in the pocket either against someone like Pettis. So a very interesting fight. For me also, I think that having done 145 pounds and walking around the same as Anthony Pettis, I think it's going to be very difficult for Pettis to go 5 hard rounds. I think it's going to be tough to have that energy and that strength at 145 as he did at 155.
I believe that the difference maker in this fight will be the cardio factor because they both have their strengths with the striking. Holloway, like you said, he's always in the perfect range, but Pettis uses his movement very well, and he uses his kicks very well. So the kicks make up for the range that you might be missing, right? If you're a heavy kicker, which Anthony Pettis is, and then the grappling. Anthony's not a big takedown artist, but he likes to work on the ground. So we'll see. But I believe the fact that him having to cut weight again might take a lot out of him, and that might be the difference maker. I believe if his cardio is on point, I believe he has the tools to defeat Max, but, it can go the other way, of course.
I agree. I mean, it's a tough weight cut, and it being 5 rounds, and having done that, it is brutal on the body. And I saw Anthony about a month ago. I think he stopped by the Fox Studios, and he seemed pretty big, man. This was just before this was announced.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried for him.
No pressure.
He absolutely does have the skills to win. Yeah.
Now, from experience, you're an ex-fighter that did the same thing, that followed the same path. I mean, do you see yourself when you were fighting at 155 as big as Anthony? And do you relate that to his weight cut when you started to cut for 145?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life physically. I mean, to get down in weight and just even the whole training camp. It's almost like for me at the time, it was very difficult, especially as I got towards the end of the camp. I mean, I was eating like 1,500 calories a day, training 3 times a day, and it became about making the weight. And a fight should never be about that. Your first opponent should never be the scale. So,
Absolutely,
now,
man.
Versus Dooho Choi, that's going to be an incredible fight. That's probably, in my opinion, that's going to be the fight of the night. In my opinion, I don't know.
I love that you guys brought it up because Cub Swanson is such a goer, man. I mean, he's a guy who's always going to move forward. He's always looking to finish. He's very exciting to the point where he'll make mistakes and he just doesn't care. He'll do some crazy stuff in the octagon.
Yeah.
And Dooho Choi, I've been on the Choi train for a little while, man. I love this kid. I think he's a knockout artist. He looks like he's like 11 years old.
The Super Boy,
like he barely touches you, and people just go to sleep. And this is another guy who stays very calm. He doesn't get rattled. He has crazy knockout power. Now, we haven't really seen him on the mat. I don't know how good he is off of his back, truly. But as far as his stand-up game, man, he's so clean, so calm. And he's got crazy knockout power. He's very smart at getting the proper angles, setting you up. He can counter punch. So I think that's going to be a great fight, and I have Choi as a favorite actually heading into this against Swanson. I know Swanson's kind of at the end of his career, and I know he's not going to be content with a loss here. But I just think that Dooho Choi just a little bit cleaner of a fighter. He's younger. Less miles on the body. And,
I'm with you,
I
man.
think he gets it done.
You actually, I forgot what I was watching, but you put me on him because you brought him up, and I was like, "Who is this guy?" And then I looked him up. I'm like, "Oh, he is a bad man." And his past 2 fights, I think his opponents got him to the ground, but he just looks super calm.
This guy's clean.
Yeah, he got back up, and he just that 1-2, man.
Is he the resurrection of Conor McGregor at that weight class? Is he?
He's the Korean Conor McGregor.
Yeah. We'll call him Mick Choi.
He hasn't even hit puberty yet, and he's knocking people out.
Oh my God.
Yep. Mick Choi.
Mick Choi. That's it. Dooho Mick Choi.
That's a good one.
Is he the guy? One of the point with the stand up and. He's done all the right work to get him back on track. But in your opinion, how do you see this fight going?
Geez, it's so hard, mainly because we just don't know what BJ Penn is going to show up. I think that has always been the issue. BJ is a guy with unlimited potential. He had so much talent. He had a lot of natural instincts that you just kind of can't teach. And I think the issue with BJ has always been BJ. How hard does he train? What's his mindset like? Is he healthy? All these things. And I think that if he is healthy and if he is motivated, if he is feeling good, he's not in his own head.
Yeah.
BJ Penn can beat anybody. It doesn't matter. 145, 155, he'll give a lot of trouble to 170 for a lot of 170 pounders today. But I think that BJ should be able to win it if he has all those things in place. But Yair is a guy who's he's a tough up-and-comer. He's very fast. Mm-hmm. He kind of has a new breed of striking that we're seeing now, guys that are coming from more of a traditional martial arts striking background like a taekwondo or karate. Very and it's dynamic. A rhythm and a movement that is a little bit unusual for a lot of guys who train in your typical boxing or kickboxing gym. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to see how he's going to be able to handle that kind of speed, that kind of rhythm, and that kind of, I guess, for mixed martial arts, somewhat unorthodox style. And I think that I think either way, I think it's going to be a tough fight for him.
Yeah.
But Yair, I think, is a guy that, while he is flashy and he's very dynamic with his striking, sometimes I feel like, and I was very critical of him.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Because I was very critical of him in his last fight because it wasn't. There's no real rhyme or reason to the things that he does and why he does them. And I like seeing flash. I love it, but there comes a certain point like he wasn't landing any of that stuff, and he must have thrown like 10 tornado kicks in a round. And I'm going, well, how about you set up over the jab?
Yeah.
How about just a one? Give me 1-1-2, at least to try to find your range.
Yeah.
And he just kept spinning and throwing and throwing all these crazy kicks. And
it's almost a waste of time and energy.
It just seemed like a little bit desperate. It seemed a little desperate.
Yeah, I hear you. It's almost a waste of time and energy, right? Like at some point, you have to acknowledge that certain things are not worth doing anymore, and let's just go back to the basics.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's like me trying to fire up a bunch of triangles and arm locks when the arm's not really there, and it looks cool, but man, stop. It's not there. It's not even there. Stop.
Give it up.
Yeah.
One of the things I see that could be the difference maker for BJ in that fight, and one of the things that you see in jiu-jitsu commonly is stick to the fundamentals. The fundamentals, a strong foundation can defeat the flashy, the young, the inexperienced. And that's what we see when a black belt goes against a purple belt. A purple belt does all these flashy things. They try everything that's new. They're aggressive. They're young. They're excited. They take chances. And the black belt with the experience, he doesn't do anything fancy. He just makes sure he minds his P's and Q's, underhooks, and sticks to a strong foundation of fundamentals. I believe if BJ does that and closes distance and stays with the fundamentals, I believe that could be the difference maker against a young Yair.
I agree, man. I think there are some universal truths within the fight game, within the jiu-jitsu game, that if you stick to, those will always be true. If you talk about base and balance and proper positioning, that takes care of a lot of the things. Techniques and movements will always change, but those sort of universal truths remain constant. And I think you kind of have to keep that in mind, that yes, you can do all the new stuff, you can do the crazy stuff, but there needs to be a rhyme and reason. It needs to be set up, and you need to have those fundamental principles in mind at all times.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Ames.
No, you were going to say something.
Oh, no.
You threw me off.
Sorry. Moving on, I wanted to get your opinion on the next Ronda Rousey fight versus the champion Amanda Nunes. How do you see that fight going? That's so exciting. It's coming up.
Oh, man. It is. It is really exciting. I'm really curious to see how Ronda Rousey comes back from this kind of adversity because, it's a tough thing that it's hard to accept all the good things that people say about you and all the bad things that people say about you because, you start to kind of believe it. Even if it's a good thing or a bad thing, you have to be very careful. And I think that Ronda may have been, drinking the Kool-Aid and accepting what all these people were saying about her. She was on every single magazine. She was on all the talk shows. She was, getting movie offers and this and that. And I think those are a lot of distractions.
Sure.
And she probably had, this crazy entourage. So it's hard because, she was told this kind of lie that she was invincible. But as we all know, no one is invincible. And I think that when she lost, it could be very devastating if she did believe that. So I'm curious to see how she comes back, how she's able to deal with this kind of adversity, and how she was able to come back from not only a loss but a knockout loss in front of a lot of people. So
that was one of the biggest crowds.
Yeah, it was a huge crowd. So many people watching on pay-per-view. And my understanding is that she's only 5 pounds away from 135 already, which is very impressive. So she's very close. She's been walking around apparently at this weight now for the last week or so. And she's ready to go, apparently. So I'm curious to see, first of all, how she's going to approach the fight. Is she going to go in there and just, bum rush her and try to take her to the mat immediately? Is she going to try to strike with her? Is she going to take her time? Is she going to try to get the fight over with real quickly in Ronda Rousey fashion? I don't know. I think Rousey does have the ability to submit any woman in the world at 135 pounds. Obviously, I think that her striking knowledge and experience needs to be improved greatly. I think she still has natural power to hurt Amanda. I just think Amanda is just far superior when it comes to the striking game, and she's not. Obviously, she's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, so she's not going to be lost on the mat either.
No. In your opinion, if you're Ronda Rousey, when you're trying to get over the hump of what happened to her, losing her title and getting knocked out that way, do you, in an effort to kind of build yourself back up and fix yourself, do you tell Ronda, whether it's Ronda herself, her mind, or her coaches, do you say, hey, Ronda, that was just a bad fight. That just didn't go your way. Everybody has bad fights every now and then. You're still Ronda Rousey. Or do you go the route of, no, Ronda, we're believing the Kool-Aid a little too much. Let's get back to hard work. You did have a bad fight. We can acknowledge that. But also, we did have some holes in our training.
That Conor McGregor type.
Yeah, which way do we go with, how do we fix, if you're Ronda, how do you try and fix what had happened to you to get back to... Sorry, yeah.
I would be very upfront and very honest and just tell her that, listen, it might have been a bad fight. You might have had some injuries heading into this fight. You might have had some distractions, but let's look at what's real. Let's look at the fact that you had a lot of vulnerabilities and have had a lot of vulnerabilities with your striking. There's been some holes there. We need to improve the way that you enter and take people down. And we're going to work on that. We're going to get better as a martial artist. There are improvements that need to be made. And at the elite level, if you're not all the way there and if you're not fighting, to your strengths, you're going to be in trouble. So let's make those weaknesses strengths and let's get to work. And I think that's the way you got to approach it. I never like telling fighters, if they're doing good when they're not. I just don't. I think you got to be upfront with them and take it, really approach it from a technical level and look at the technical, the insufficiencies in the game.